Welcome to episode 147 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. I'm Laura, also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea where I sell my hand-spun yarns, and we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea. Hi, how are you? This one is going to be a little bit by the seat of my pants. I expect it to be a little short as well. I have a house full of house guests. My mother-in-law and the kids are back. That is my 19-year-old niece and my 12-year-old nephew, and they have been running roughshod all over the place, and I am sneaking away just a few moments to record a quick podcast. They will be here till Monday when my niece is flying home. My nephew is actually staying for 2 more weeks. But she has to get back for work and school. So she is heading back on Monday, so they're staying here for the rest of the weekend. We had a lovely afternoon. We went up to the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art that is here in Kansas City, and I got to see my favorite painting, which is we actually have one of the triptych from Monet's Water Lilies. So I got to go see that this afternoon, and we wandered throughout the gallery and grounds. It actually has been beautiful weather this weekend after being crazy hot in the 100+ range for the last couple weeks. We had a huge storm on Wednesday night, Thursday morning, which resulted in quite a bit of flooding in the city, actually. We are okay, and it was a lot of businesses. I don't know how many people's homes were really affected, but it was kind of crazy midweek, and now it is cool. It is like the high is 81 today, so it is lovely out. I have had a lot of exercise. I am ready to put my feet up, and my niece asked if she could cook us all dinner, so I may need to supervise a little bit of that, but otherwise I am looking forward to a quiet evening and to try and get a few things done. So let's go through everything pretty quickly this week. I am drinking a cold brew again. I put in kind of lukewarm water and then a mint tea bag. This is Stash Peppermint Herbal Caffeine-Free Tea. There is nothing more than I like than a mint tea, particularly when it is hot out. I find it very cool and refreshing. So I just did this with some cold water. Well, it was lukewarm, now it's cool. Quite pepperminty and nice. So that is what I am drinking today, and I am drinking in my favorite Kansas joke mug. We get lots of Wizard of Oz jokes here, and this is my Toto mug that said, "Dorothy, hate Oz, took the shoes, find your own way home. Love Toto." So that was one of those things I saw in the airport and just love. We get tons of Wizard of Oz jokes here in Kansas. And we also have a Wizard of Oz museum and a whole variety of Oz-related things. So let's get to the knits real fast. I have two, one almost finished object. This is Roxy's sweater. I showed this to you last week, but I added button bands after we spoke, and I went ahead and gave it a good blocking, so it just looks lovely now. Again, this is the Playful Stripes cardigan by Alana Dakos. It is Cascade 220 Sport Weight in the Alaskan Sky colorway, and then I used that gorgeous bugga, Sanguine Griffin bugga that is no longer made, and I don't know if you can tell, it's variegated. It's got purple and pink and browns in it, and I think it's really pretty. The only thing that remains, and I really need to do this tonight because I need to take photos and post the project for Camp Loopy, is it needs buttons, and I have beautiful purple buttons, so I just need to get out the sewing kit tonight and sew those on. That is my project for this evening, and then I can take photos of it and post it, and we are done with Loopy Project 2 for the summer. So that is the first. The second project that I finished is that, oh, and I forgot the labels. This is the yarn that I was reviewing. This is Shepherd's Lamb, which is a mill out of, I believe, New Mexico, and it is a farm out of New Mexico that has their own sheep, and this is their Rambouillet blend. It is a 2-ply DK, and this was indigo dyed, and I chose to knit the Sea Beanie hat by the late Elena Nodell. She passed away earlier this year. She bravely fought cancer. And this was a pattern that I actually had purchased a while ago and always wanted to make, and I thought this would be a really nice yarn for it. The yarn itself was lovely to work with. It is pretty soft. I don't know how to describe it. It feels almost cottony soft. It's super squishy. It also definitely feels like wool in the sense that it's like quite sticky. It sticks to itself. And so I really liked it. I thought it did some really great stitch definition here. And it was really pleasurable to work with. I didn't find it hard to handle. The finished project is really nice and squishy and kind of light. I sort of struggled to decide whether it was a worsted or woolen spun, and I think it's probably a combination of the two, which is probably why I couldn't decide. And like I said, it's got some nice cable and stitch definition, but it's just really nice and squishy and airy, and I think it will be a fabulous hat. My only complaint about the yarn is not really a complaint about the yarn itself. I had forgotten some of the properties of indigo. The shepherd's lamb wool comes in all different colorways, but they are all naturally dyed. And I had forgotten that indigo is kind of a funny dye. It is not water soluble, so it does not ever bond with the, it does not ever settle kind of on the yarn or in the fibers. It actually sort of rests on top of the fibers. So that is why, for instance, denim jeans fade. So indigo is a dye that is not super permanent. Now there are these days some synthetic indigos that do not fade over time, but this one will fade over time. And the other thing that the yarn did was it does what's called crocking, which is when you apply the heat and the friction of your hands as you're knitting, the dye sort of comes off on your hands. So my hands turned blue. That was my only complaint about this. It was pretty easily washed off. All I needed was a little bit of water and soap. And it did not bleed. Importantly, the yarn did not bleed. So when I washed it, the water was completely clear. So the indigo needs kind of the heat and oils to come off on your skin. And the only thing that I'm worried about, a little worried about, is whether or not the indigo would actually come off like on your forehead were you to wear this hat. So I think to mitigate that, I may actually knit some kind of a softer brim and just pick up at the bottom here and do like a folded under brim, just line it for that so that I don't have to worry about that. The other thing that I read when I was looking up properties of indigo dyes was that sometimes you can set it in really, really hot water. Now, of course, this is 100% wool yarn, so, and it is not superwash. So if I use really, really hot water, I would want to be really, really careful not to agitate it at all. So I would probably want to put it in the really hot water and then just wait several hours until the hot water was down to room temperature, and then I could pull it out and kind of roll it in a towel to gently squeeze water out of it and then pat it dry. So, like I said, my experience with the yarn was super positive. I would definitely use it for another project. My frustration, actually, like I said, was with the indigo dye, not the yarn itself. But I just wanted to put that on there as a caveat. Many thanks to Shepherd's Lamb for sending me a skein for review. This hat, I think, took about 150 out of the 180 yards that are in the skein. I have just a little bit left over. And of course, that's in the bag with the label, which is out in the living room, which is where all the people are, so I'll just let that go. But this was a really fun knit, and I really enjoyed working with the yarn, so I would highly recommend if you are interested in particularly in woolly yarns and natural dyes, Shepherd's Lamb would be a good place to look, and I will put a link in the show notes to their website. So that is that one. So that brings me to what I'm working on. I finished and put a pom-pom on Miles' hat. I didn't bring that back to show you. That was one of the things I did this week. I also started my, I showed you this one first. I'll just grab one of my sock blockers. I showed you this one a couple weeks ago. This was my After the Storm sock. This is yarn by On the Round, and it is just my standard sock, although I did do an afterthought heel for this one because I wanted to maintain the striping that happened in the yarn sort of accidentally. So I used Susan B. Anderson's Smooth Operator socks for the heel. And as you can see, this yarn is kind of a cream color and a dark blue, and then it's got all these beautiful splotches of rainbow colors. So I am working on the second, and I had hoped to finish it by now, but I'm not quite there. You can see I am on the foot. As I said, I'm doing an afterthought heel. So I did the cuff, and then you can probably maybe see this strand of green here. It's bright green in real life. It stands out quite a bit. That is my waist yarn for my forethought afterthought heel. And then I am a good chunk of the way through the foot. I'm probably halfway, so I have about half more foot to go, and then do the toe, and then open it back up and do the heel. My hope is that maybe I'll finish these before Monday. I should have a little bit of knitting time tonight and tomorrow after I sew the buttons on that sweater. So that is the project to finish this weekend. And then I'll have to figure out what pair of socks to knit, because I won't have a pair of socks on the needles, and I don't even know that I have more yarn wound for socks. So I will need to figure out what the next sock project is. However, Tuesday is August 1st, which means it is time for the third and final Camp Loopy project. So I brought the yarn. The pattern qualifications for this one are it must have been produced since 2014. On the previous project, it was pre-2014, so now it's post-2014. And I selected a brand new pattern that I just saw a week or two ago. And it is just gorgeous. It is called the Bentley Cardigan, and it is just kind of a, let's see if I can, it is just kind of a plain cardigan. It is shown here in green. It is a top-down raglan, and then it's got some very simple texturing on the front. So, and it should be a nice cardigan. It does have button bands and buttonholes. She wore it open. The other thing that I really like is it's got this really cool sleeve detailing. Let me see if I can find it for you. Let's do this one. You can see the sleeve had this, the cuffs have this really cool detail where they're a little bit open and closed by a button. It's kind of a sweet vintage design, and it's not entirely me, but I thought it would be fun. And then I went ahead and selected, this is Gherkin's Bucket Inspired Fiber and Yarn. The colorway is Royale, and it is her long stride sock, light fingering lace, 750 yards per 150 grams. So it is super sized, and I got 2 skeins of this royal blue that I think is going to be absolutely just fun color. I don't have anything in this color, so I hope this is going to be great. I'm going to wind this up this weekend, and I will alternate skeins because this is an indie dyed, and I want to be sure that I don't have any color blotches. But 2 skeins should get me it's a really light fingering weight cardigan, so 2 skeins should get me there, and I am super excited about that. So by the time I see you next week, I will hopefully have this started and have something to show you, and I'll probably have picked up another pair of socks or something to start. I still need to do some winter stuff for the kids, so maybe I'll pull some of that. So let me take a quick sip of tea, and then I'm gonna go through spinning really fast. Like I said, this one's gonna be short because I have a house full of noisy guests. I hope you're not gonna end up hearing that on the podcast, but we'll just finish up and get back to them so they don't destroy the house. The children are, I say the children, and they act like children. This week, for the most part, I stayed away from my wheel, but I did finish this. I had partially spun the singles for this last Tour de Fleece, and so I finished the last couple ounces and I plied it together, and I have about 550 yards of smoke. This is a Corriedale cross that was dyed by Fat Cat Knits. It's definitely rustic. It's the other skein softened up quite a bit after the wash. So I have between 1,000 and 1,100 yards, and this is the main body for my hap shawl, which I will eventually get around to knitting. It may be one of those retirement things. But this added another 8 ounces to my month's total and another about 550 yards to my stash dash. I am now up to over 8,000. So the real question is, stash dash goes till August 20th. So in the next 3 weeks, can I do another 2,000 yards? I don't think I'm going to quite make it, but we shall see. So that's this one. And then I brought a braid that I will get back to my normal spinning schedule this week. This is a braid that I love, love, love. It is by a dyer who is sadly no longer in business. The dyer was Maud and Me, and it was Tracy, and she had a beautiful, beautiful cat named Maud, who was she had quite a personality. And when Tracy was living overseas in Australia, she has since returned to the States several years ago, and that's when she closed down her dyeing business. She died in Australia. And so the yarn is called Maud and Me, and it is 100% New Zealand. You know what? She was in New Zealand, not Australia. She was in New Zealand. 100% New Zealand Polworth, 4.3 ounces, 123 grams, and the colorway is called Love Will Tear Us Apart. It's pinks and reds and oranges, and I am looking forward to spinning this. Tracy's fiber was always impeccable, and I loved her color choices. I think I still have one more braid somewhere of blues that I am just hoarding because I know she probably won't dye again. But this one I decided was pretty, and I wanted to spin some color after finishing my kind of non-color. So that is what will be on the wheel this week. So that is what I have for you. I hope you're having a wonderful summer and enjoying time with family and friends and crafting. And I am going to take off now, but I hope that I will have more to show you next week and more to talk about. And until I see you again, I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time.